Car chases are dangerous and unpredictable. Viewer discretion advised.
We are following a carjacking suspect pursuit right now here in the Compton area, right here on CBS 2 News at 11. Certainly a very dangerous situation unfolding, not only because he is going freeway speeds on surface streets, but also because the roads are so wet right now because of all the rain.
And incredibly, he's had pretty good control. We see him driving through puddles right now. Hasn't hit anybody yet, but we have seen a few close calls. He exited the freeway about 10 minutes ago. Then he was going down residential streets. He has slowed his speed a little bit, possibly because of some of the turns he was making. He seemed like he was veering left and right. But now we're seeing him get close to it. Looks like he might be heading toward the port with all of these big rigs on the freeway with him.
Yeah. Sir, are you still on the phone with us? Do you believe that
Yeah.
this suspect is just aimlessly driving around, or do you think he seems to know where he's going?
Well, that's hard to determine, but a lot of times what these guys do is they get out into a location they're not familiar with, and they're just kind of going around in circles trying to figure out where they are. And it's more of a panic response than a coordinated effort on his behalf.
It does look like, Officer Reitz, it has been pretty erratic because it appears almost like he's been going in circles, going through residential neighborhoods. And look at all that water that's kicking up. It seems like there's a decent amount of flooding out there. If he makes a wrong turn, this could really be disastrous. Hopefully there's not a lot of vehicles at these cross streets. Like it looks like we're coming up on a light here.
Yeah. Certainly, sir, Del Alma Boulevard now, we just saw him on here in the Compton area. We keep asking you, but with the rain and the water in the roads, how does that affect things?
Well, again, you have very slick surface conditions, and the problem, of course, are the other vehicles. This guy's going in an erratic pattern, so you can't block off every other intersection. So that's one of the problems. And if this guy elects to run through stop signs or traffic control systems, then you're going to run into a real mess. And right now he's picking up speed, and now it becomes a little more dangerous than it was initially.
All right, he is heading north now on Wilmington Avenue, still in the Compton area. Back on surface streets right now, you can see several police vehicles in hot pursuit behind him. They did give him some distance at one point. They backed off, but then you can see right now they are back on his tail. Certainly, this isn't just a concern for drivers out there, but also for the suspect himself, because clearly he's putting himself in danger considering the road conditions right now.
Well, that's true, and I don't think this guy really cares one way or the other about his own safety at this point. I think what he's concerned about is just getting away from the police, and that's simply what we term a non-event. It's not going to happen. If this guy bails, we're going to get on top of him. They'll have air units. They have FLIR, forward-looking infrared. We can go white hot or black hot, and they can also pull in the canine. So this guy's going to get caught one way or the other.
All right, Wilmington, you can see Wilmington Avenue there. He is heading northbound.
And clearly, this is somebody who is desperate. They are a carjacking suspect. They could be armed. They may not be. But of course, officers are pursuing under the assumption that he is armed, because this is somebody who had no problem getting a person from behind the wheel of their own car and stealing their vehicle. And he hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. He's gotten really close to vehicles that he came up on at intersections. Thankfully, hasn't hit anybody yet, hasn't lost control, but it could be a matter of time, of course. Officer Reitz, we see him getting into another intersection here, concerned about that black vehicle. He's thankfully managed to escape hitting anybody, but it just takes the wrong turn or hitting some slick roads, and that could be a major problem.
Well, that's absolutely correct. The other thing, too, is you have people that are driving, they're looking forward, especially in inclement weather conditions, and they may not be looking in the rearview mirror, so if they make an erratic turn in front of the suspect, then he's going to plow right into them.
And we just saw you cross the 105 freeway here in the Compton area. Officer Reitz, you have a lot of experience, sir. You're former LAPD SWAT. What goes through the minds of drivers like this? Do they really think they're going to get away?
Well, a lot of these guys are working at room temperature IQ, so unfortunately, yes.
That's one way to put it.
And Officer Reitz, it looks like he's heading toward the Linwood Southgate areas, going northbound on Wilmington, just past the 405, heading towards Santa Ana Boulevard. If you're in that area, of course, you want to be careful. It's already a day where people have to be extra careful on the roads, give plenty of space. But then we have a pursuit suspect with at least a half dozen cruisers in pursuit. How will they work on connecting with other agencies? Are they just going to keep pursuing, or do they start handing it over at some point?
Generally, they'll keep on unless there's some unusual circumstance. They're the one that initiated the pursuit, so they're going to continue with it. And if they need a coordinated effort, then they'll just go to claymores, and they can coordinate through attack frequencies with other individuals.
Interesting, just now we saw him go through a shopping center parking lot there. Almost, it seemed like, hit some people out there with their umbrellas, going extremely fast through that parking lot there. Certainly, sir, the danger element in all this is something that officers are concerned about.
Oh, that's correct. Absolutely. And, again, if he's, going through, as he just did, went through the parking lot, you've got some unsuspecting pedestrian coming out of the store, there's a good chance that he can strike them as well.
So this is interesting. Now he's pulling into another lot.
Oh, gates open.
Is that going to pop his tires? Didn't it look like he was going the wrong way?
Yeah.
Hopefully, for the officer's sake, it did some damage. I mean, that would be like an instant spike strip, wouldn't it?
And you can see the emergency lights flashing, the windshield wipers are going. Looks like he's in some sort of a gated area here, so I don't think he has many options left. It'll be interesting to see. He is slowing down, and as you just mentioned, Suzanne, perhaps he went over some spikes there, which may be why he is slowing down at this point.
Or maybe he might know somebody in the area. You know how sometimes these suspects will go home, they'll try to get inside. Well, you see those hazards are on, and he's slowing down. There's a person standing out there. Don't know if they're just looky-loos trying to get a picture or what, but you would think a carjacking suspect, you don't want to get anywhere near this vehicle right now.
So Officer Wrights, what happens now?
Well, if he comes to resolution, they're just going to...
There we go. They're boxing him in, or trying to. Wow. Okay, that was pretty close.
Okay, now he's picking up speed again. This is confusing. So he slowed down, made a U-turn, and now he's picking up speed again. Is he going to go right back through the gate he came in? Yep. Unbelievable.
Well, it's interesting. You wonder if he knew that community. He was looking to see if somebody was home possibly, but cruised right past 3 LAPD vehicles. And we see he's crossing Center Avenue right there, got really close to that black car to the right of our screen. This driver is on the run. Clearly wasn't scared of the cruisers that were trying to close him in, so this is somebody desperate to get away.
What do you think about that moment just now, Officer Wrights, that he was just able to go by all of those police vehicles lined up there like that?
Well, LAPD has a slightly different pursuit policy than we had, a number of years ago. But it was, pretty good on his part. I mean, he went back, just basically reversed 180 on him, and so they'll just get right back on him and they'll continue the pursuit.
I mean, but why not just block him in?
Well, they have certain policies. I don't know if they want to do a head-on in a situation like that. You have airbags, and if you have a potential suspect that's armed, you don't want to get in the basically windshield gunfight confrontation.
Now, this is interesting. Does he think he got away? Now he's, he doesn't.
Oh, he stopped.
Oh, maybe he's giving up.
And now he's going again.
This is the first time we've seen him stop since this pursuit started. I thought maybe the cruisers are far behind. You know how sometimes they'll try and blend in, but now they were right on his tail.
And you even saw the officer open his door. He thought he was stopping as well.
Yeah.
So clearly this guy is playing games with the police, because at one point he stops, at another he speeds up. It just seems like he can't make up his mind.
Or that he's taunting him. Officer, what do you make of that? And you even see one of the officers open up his door thinking this might be the end of it. We're playing that tape on the left side of the screen.
Well, a lot of suspects operate in a very extemporaneous manner. You don't know if he's under the influence, if he's young, immature. If he's a kid, he's just scared. There are any number of, causal factors which would cause a suspect to act in an erratic fashion. The officers just have to play off of that.
Yeah, well, this is interesting now. He stopped here. The cruiser is back a bit, kind of giving them some space, probably backing up so they don't make a desperate move, right?
And there are the officers, they've given him a lot of space. So why not just go up to him like they did before?
Well, they may have received additional information on something. I don't. Because remember, they're privy to information that we are not, and at this point, they may have found out. Perhaps there's a confirmation that he is in fact armed, possibly suicidal. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, when you see officers creating more distance between a suspect, that lets you know they're rethinking things. They're giving him space so he doesn't do anything drastic, especially if he's already carjacked a vehicle, driving somebody else's vehicle.
There he goes again.
And you have at least a half dozen LAPD units behind him, and they're hanging back. It does cause some concern.
And we could see a cluster, it looks like, of LAPD vehicles now. It looks like half a dozen at least. Earlier we just saw a couple, but now they have obviously increased their numbers. He now is considerable distance apart from those other vehicles, picking up speed again. He keeps stopping and going. So it's interesting, his tactic here. And Suzanne, you mentioned it almost feels like he's taunting the officers. Have you seen that, Officer Wrights?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Suspects will do that sometimes. The last thing you want to do is get in a confrontation where it's, I think the terminology most of you have heard is suicide by copy. Leave information along that line. I had a case like that once. And, you know, again, you don't want to precipitate that. The other thing, too, is that they may be deciding as to whether or not they want to terminate the pursuit. If they've already got his information, they can just hope, let him drive it down and get him at a later date.
Sure, and sometimes they'll leave the chopper overhead kind of monitoring, but they don't feel that pressure of cruisers on their tail. And we do see a lot more traffic than we did just 10, 15 minutes ago.
And it appears he keeps circling this area. This is Wilmington Avenue in Compton. He was in this area just moments ago, circling around, then got into some sort of a gated area, did a 180, and then came all the way back out, right past a lot of officers. So my guess, Officer Wrights, is that this is an area he is familiar with.
I don't know. It could be, or he's certainly getting the lay of the land at this point. He keeps on circling back around, so maybe he's refamiliarizing himself with the area.
At least he's slowed down his speeds a little bit, driving in this rain with it already being dangerous on the roads right now. He's driving in Compton. This carjacking suspect we've been following for at least the past 15 minutes. He was going really fast earlier, zipping through puddles and taking tight turns and desperately driving through lights. Now we've seen him slow down a little bit. He's stopping at intersections instead of blowing right through them. But you do wonder what's going through his mind, because it doesn't seem like he's appearing to try to solve this. It just seems like he's being a little more responsible.
And we're going to kind of try to zoom in there. You can see the windshield wipers are going. He had the emergency lights flashing earlier. It appears that is no longer the case. But the danger, of course, not only because of the slick roads, but that this is a residential area. He was going very fast next to some pedestrians and also next to cars going in the opposite lane of traffic at one point. You can see in the upper right of your screen there, all of those police vehicles. They are aware of where he is. It's interesting that he was plowing through a lot of these intersections. This is Tejada Avenue. Now he seems to be following directions. He's actually paying attention to the stoplights, oddly enough. I mean, what do you make of that, Officer Wrights?
I have no idea. You know, it could be that he's on the phone with other individuals, friends, or whatever, family members, trying to negotiate with them, or trying to figure out a way out of this. It's anybody's guess at this point in time, because we're all working with limited information.
Now, Officer Reitz, we see him following the traffic laws out there, but of course, we don't want to forget this is a carjacking suspect wanted for stealing this vehicle from somebody else. We don't know if he is or isn't armed. Earlier, we had a half dozen LAPD cruisers following in close pursuit. It looks like he just passed Rosecrans Avenue right now, just circling areas of Compton. About 15, 20 minutes ago, he was exiting the freeway and then entered this neighborhood, went through Linwood, back in Compton, but it does appear circled areas, went into one gated community with one gate open. And it did appear that he might be familiar with the area, because usually you go one way through a gate. You're worried about the spikes going through your tires, but he just cruised both ways. He seemed very comfortable just breezing past three of those police vehicles. And thankfully followed the law there, because that could have been really, really terrible.
And now he's stopping again. So at some points he doesn't pay attention to the lights. At other points he does. Now it appears he is. So it's interesting to see what he does next, because, okay, we're going to try to zoom out just to see. Okay, there are the police vehicles right there. They're slowly following him. And Officer Reitz, you mentioned earlier that perhaps they've got some information now about this driver. That is why they are backing off. Earlier they were right up against him, but now it seems that they are definitely keeping a safe distance.
Well, that's correct. And again, when you get information, if you have the possibility the person is suicidal, or if he's armed or has the intent to inflict harm upon others with a firearm, then they're going to give them some separational distance, and that tactically goes to the officer's advantage.
And we see he's picking up speeds again. So we don't know if he's talking on the phone. That's when he slows down and then puts it down and hits the gas. but it's been very erratic this entire time. Thankfully, he's on some main roads, but earlier when we saw him go into a parking lot, there were people walking to their vehicles with umbrellas. It looked really like a close call. You don't want to be in a parking lot when somebody's zipping through like that. And then went down some residential streets. Here we come up on some traffic here.
And now we're learning the LA County Sheriff's Department is joining in this pursuit right now. He is at Central Avenue, again in the Compton area. The LA County Sheriff's Department now a part of this pursuit. It appears that he has stopped again.
And look at that rain coming down.
Yeah, it is. And Officer Reitz, I know we have chases all the time, it seems, here in Southern California, but if you could put it in perspective, sir, I can't remember the last time we actually saw a chase during a storm. I mean, that seems pretty erratic.
Well, rain in Southern California is kind of a rare phenomenon. So for us, it's basically emergency, conditions. Yeah, it's very unusual. Usually dry surface conditions, and this one, it's going to make it just a little more erratic and a little more unpredictable.
It's interesting. This is the new thing he's been doing, just stopping at lights. Seems like he's figuring out what to do. And before we had well, now it's LA Sheriffs. Before we had officers following in close pursuit. Now they've created some distance, which makes us wonder if he might have a weapon behind the wheel. He is a carjacking suspect after all. You wonder how he was able to secure that vehicle from the person he took it from.
And Officer Reitz, it looks like he has stopped now. He is not moving. What options now do the deputies have in trying to bring him into custody?
Well, one of the things you don't know if he came to a permanent at-rest position or is he just waiting for surface control? Did he run out of gas? I don't know what his thought pattern is at this point. So we're just going to hang back and find out what he wants to do, and then they're going to, initially, they'll start with verbal commands over the loudspeaker PA system, public address system, but if not, if he keeps rolling, then you're right back into pursuit mode.
Yeah, and we're working on getting a specific area, but this is Compton at Central Avenue, working on that other cross street. But he has been circling the Compton area for about the past 15 minutes.
All right, joining us now by phone, Officer Reitz, stay with us. We're going to just switch over here to Sergeant Benjamin Grubb. He is with the LA County Sheriff's Department. Sergeant Grubb, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can.
What are your thoughts, sir, on this pursuit that we're following?
Well, what I can tell you is that we're all monitoring on our monitors here a 2008 Kia Spectrum that the deputies from the Compton Sheriff's Station are behind here.
And I understand that this is a carjacking suspect.
Yeah, that's correct. The information I have is that it's actually a carjacking that occurred on January 12th, and the deputies followed behind this vehicle approximately Rosecrans and Wilmington at about 10:45 this morning.
Okay.
So we're on Willowbrook now following him, and we had passed Central a few minutes ago. We're in the Willowbrook area, actually. So because we're seeing LA Sheriff's Department vehicles pull back a little bit, what are the concerns about this person? We don't know much about him.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of information, and the deputies are behind it, and the initial circumstances behind the carjacking indicated that the suspect had a weapon when the vehicle was initially reported stolen. Now, we have to remember that we can't assume that this is the same person that's behind the vehicle, in charge of the vehicle now.
All right, he is on 120th going beneath the 105 freeway right now here in the Willowbrook area. Sergeant Grubb, I know obviously that he is going very fast and driving erratically at times, many close calls. The fact that it's raining right now, that the roads are so wet, how does that affect things?
Well, it needs to be taken into account. I think the thing that we have to remember is the immediate apprehension of the violator is not more important than the safety of the involved bystanders, other motorists, and the deputy. So we have to take those things into account when we're behind such a vehicle like this. Obviously, someone that's potentially involved with an armed carjacking would be a great risk to the public. So that all has to be determined by those in charge of this pursuit.
And it does appear he's on the westbound 105 freeway, back on the freeways, because earlier when this began, he was exiting the freeway. Does protocol change now that he is among so much more traffic now?
Again, they have to take everything into account. Things of this nature. Freeways are involved. We look for support from California Highway Patrol, and there's lots of things to take into consideration.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, sir, right now the LA County Sheriff's Department is involved, but now that he's on the freeway, on the 105, you mentioned the CHP. At what point do you bring in the CHP to something like this?
Well, it's a matter of the location of those vehicles, the workloads of different departments, and the involvement of our partners at the California Highway Patrol.
All right, he is moving now into the South LA area. This driver, as Suzanne just mentioned, was on the freeway about 20 minutes ago. Then he got off on surface streets and circled around, it seemed like, for several minutes on surface streets in the Compton, South LA area. Now back on the freeway going westbound on the 105. Is this the 110 that he's getting on now, guys? Can you give us where exactly is he going at this point? He is going on the 110. Okay, so now he is heading towards downtown. Downtown LA. This is in the South LA area, the 105 110 interchange. But you can see he is definitely picking up some speeds. I don't see, okay, there we go. There are the LA County Sheriff's vehicles. You can see off and behind him there. Sergeant Grubb, as he continues to gain speed here on the 110 freeway heading north, what options now do the sheriff's deputies have?
Well, there's several options available. Obviously, our Aero Bureau is involved in this pursuit. Now, the Sheriff's Department Aero Bureau is typically involved with these incidents, and it's something that their purpose is to monitor the pursuit, conduct communication and coordination with the involved units as a kind of an eye in the sky. Now, the Aero unit, what it does is it broadcasts the location of the suspect, estimates speeds and things of that nature, and keeps in constant communication with both the deputies on the ground and the watch commander in charge of this pursuit.
And this suspected carjacker is wanted for a carjacking on Saturday. So LA Sheriff's Department clearly able to catch up with this person, and the fact that they didn't stop makes them, I'm sure, think that maybe they have their person. But this chase, leaving the Wilmington area and going up the 110 freeway toward Gramercy Park, Avalon Gardens area, but still in the South LA area. So earlier we saw 3 vehicles in close pursuit, and now we see them pulling back a little bit. Is that just for safety reasons?
It's a possibility. It's something they have to weigh, and those eyes on the ground, based on the information they have on the field, they have to make those decisions on what's paramount as far as the public safety.
And it'll be interesting to see. 110 obviously is a very busy freeway getting into downtown, especially on a rainy day. And as we pull out, incredibly, it appears that the traffic is fairly light right now, which is pretty unusual, especially on a rainy day, as I've just mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see if he continues on the freeway or if he gets off back onto surface streets like he did earlier. But certainly this driver, as you mentioned, Sergeant Grubb, may be wanted for a violent crime. So that's something that the officers have to take into account.
Yes, correct. We also have to be concerned about the suspect once he exits the vehicle and what kind of risk that's going to pose to the public. So these things all have to be weighed carefully when deciding on decision-making for these pursuits.
All right, and our producer is telling us that Sky 2 is going to have to sort of back up a little bit because we are getting into the LAX airspace. So, of course, safety is a big concern here. But we're going to try to continue monitoring this as best we can. But as we pull out, you can see, again, just how light traffic is in downtown on a rainy day. Normally, this would be bumper to bumper. So it seems like a lucky break for the driver, not so lucky, obviously, for law enforcement and for the public.
Well, again, hopefully we can resolve this situation safely and it has a positive outcome.
And Sergeant Grubb, we, of course, have to pull back in Sky 2, but what are the rules for law enforcement in their helicopter, just in case this guy is able to pull out and away from the officers?
Well, what's called the surveillance mode is typically when the unit's on the ground, if that potentially becomes an option. The surveillance mode is the aerial surveillance of the suspect by our helicopter unit after ground units have ceased their vehicle pursuit operation. Now, the duration of the surveillance mode must be constantly evaluated against the reasons for the pursuit and the resources committed to the operation. So sometimes what we can do, or an option, is to have the vehicles back away. Now, I don't know if that's what's happening now, but to continue the Aero Bureau's observation of the suspect.
And Sergeant Grubb, do we have any details when this carjacking happened on Saturday night? Do we know what actually happened? Was there a violent altercation? What led up to this?
I don't have the exact details of what occurred, the story that transpired when the vehicle was taken, but I know it was taken with the involvement of a firearm. Mm-hmm. So again, this is a potentially armed suspect in a carjacked, as commonly referred to, vehicle. So that's the information I have. I don't have the details on the exact incident that occurred that led to the carjacking itself.
What would your advice be, sir, for the other drivers surrounding him right now? Obviously, there are a lot of cars out there on the freeway. What do drivers do in a situation like this where there is a chase going on and it's suddenly coming up behind them?
Well, I would just say to maintain a monitor of the roadway, typical safety observations from the public. When you're in your vehicle and you see red lights and sirens, please pull to the right, slow down the best you can in a safe manner.
And we're having some problem keeping eyes on the vehicle. But of course, we are following a carjacking suspect wanted for stealing a vehicle armed with a firearm. We don't know if he still has that in his possession, but that's probably one reason the LA Sheriff's Department has backed off a little bit. They were following a close pursuit earlier. The suspect was driving erratically at dangerous speeds on residential streets. But just in the last 10 minutes, we saw how they backed up, and then he kind of calmed down a little bit, stopped blowing through intersections and running red lights. But now that we're back on the freeway, I'm sure things... They're assessing the situation. They're trying to decide what to do next. That's the silver car.
Yeah, the 2008 Kia that was carjacked on Saturday. I believe that's the vehicle right there. Still on the 110, just passing Vernon. This is near USC, right on the 110 freeway heading northbound. He's getting closer into downtown. So it'll be interesting to see if he does get off on the surface streets again or if he just stays on the freeway. If so, if he stays on the 110 or if he gets off perhaps onto the 101 at some point. There are a lot of options coming up. So clearly right now, they're still trying to figure out what's going through his mind. Do you try to contact this driver via cell phone, Sergeant Grubb? I mean, how do you communicate with him since he is still going and not showing any signs of slowing down?
Yes, well, obviously, if we have any kind of intelligence that leads us to the information to come in contact with the suspect, we will use that intelligence in order to try to do that to get this to come to a safe conclusion. However, if we don't have that information, it obviously becomes a challenge. The other thing we do is we keep in contact with our partners at LAPD and CHP should this come into the jurisdiction to help us out with any kind of containment that may be necessary when the vehicle stops.
And right now we're following the suspect on the North 110 freeway coming up pretty soon on the 10. We don't know if he's going to continue this direction. He was circling the Compton area earlier, but now it seems, well, at least a few minutes ago, we thought maybe he's trying to find a certain location in Compton because he went through a few neighborhoods, and it looks like he's exiting the freeway right here.
Is this Vernon, I believe? It could be. He's definitely getting off right now, it appears. This is South LA off the 110 freeway. So it does seem that he is getting onto surface streets again, but certainly on Martin Luther King. Okay, so this is Martin Luther King Boulevard. He is getting off right now, but slowing down, it seems, Suzanne. Is he about to? Oh, that's because there are cars in front of him. We'll see if he stops or if he tries to get around like he did before.
Yeah, and you can see how there are additional cruisers right there. They're turning around to help do some backup, but also that one is staying behind you. What if they're trying to block the entrance to the on-ramp? But
okay, there he goes. He's trying to get around these vehicles, moving very slowly. It does appear, though, he may be boxed in, but it'll be interesting now that these other cars are moving if he's going to, yep, he's going to keep going. This must be frustrating, Sergeant Grubb, for the deputies who are following him.
Well, it's a complicated endeavor. These pursuits are one of the most challenging. Deputies have to maintain their utmost courage and competency under these stressful circumstances. It's one of the most challenging components of being a police officer. They have to consider, public safety, the seriousness of the offense, the speeds involved, the availability of air support, traffic, and several other factors. So it is a challenge in general to deal with the pursuit.
Yes, and now he's getting back on the southbound 110. Peter, you and I know this area very well. It's right by USC, right by Exposition Park, but he just got back on the 110 freeway heading back toward downtown.
It just seems like this driver is just aimlessly moving around, making circles. What do you make of this, Sergeant Grubb, that he just keeps turning around and going back where he came from?
Well, it's a challenge. Law enforcement has to be reactive to what the suspect is doing and try to do our best to make the public aware of this pursuit so they can avoid the police activity. And we appreciate you guys covering this and giving us an opportunity to show people what roads to avoid and things of that nature.
So the suspect is going away from downtown, heading toward the South LA area again, kind of the direction he was coming from.
Yeah, it appears that way.
All right, there is the 2008 Kia. You can see it looks like he's got his left blinker on. Oh, both now, the emergency lights. 51st Street. Oh, okay. It looks like the deputy is actually a lot closer to him than previous. We saw a big space between the suspect and the other deputies there. But now, again, back to them being close behind. So have they changed their tactic a little bit, do you think?
That looks like CC right behind him, right?
Okay.
Sergeant Grubb, do you think that the deputies have sort of gotten a little bit more aggressive with their tactic?
You know what? From the monitor I'm watching, it appears to be the California Highway Patrol that's the closest vehicle behind it. So I can't comment on.
Okay, so CHP is now involved.
It would appear so, yes, sir. That's what I'm watching.
And this is where you get a little concerned. There might be people walking down the street with LAUSD schools on strike. You might see more kids in the street. We see a guy in the bottom left or bottom right-hand side of our screen. And of course, the wet roads out there, it's dangerous if the suspect hits the gas too hard, makes a turn. It's more likely people are going to be on the wet roads, and you're going to have more vehicles pulling out of their driveways, kind of unaware of what's happening. Whereas at least when you're on the freeway, you're always looking behind you to see what's going on. These are quiet areas right now. And there you see it, just a car driving through.
Yeah, he just passed Figueroa here on 51st Street, now stopped again. Okay, now this is Hoover. Okay, you can see he is now making a left turn onto Hoover. Again, this is near USC Exposition Park area. He was heading northbound on the 110, then he got off on MLK, turned around, went back south on the 110, got back up. Now he's on Hoover near Figueroa. So it's interesting that he keeps changing his tactics. 1 minute he's stopping, 1 minute he's going freeway speeds on surface streets. What do you make of someone who's so erratic, Sergeant Grubb?
Well, again, sir, it's something that the personnel involved in the pursuit are going to have to consider. It's hard for us to guess what the suspect's mind frame is in a situation like this.
And we do know, just looking at the maps, there are several schools and a library in this area. We're seeing quite a few little strip malls. This is a residential neighborhood. This is where it creates concern of a child who might be walking out or a family. And we see people on the sidewalks holding their umbrellas. So these are neighborhoods where people could be out and about. Look just at that corner right there. You just hope he...
Oh, and very close to those people, too.
Keeps his slow speed. This is the closest we've seen the units getting to him just in the last half hour. He does appear to be slowing down a little bit. We don't know if he's trying to decide his next move, but this is a carjacking suspect wanted for stealing this car on Saturday, allegedly with a firearm. So they don't know if he still has that weapon in his possession, but we do know he's trying to get away and clearly knows he faces some serious charges.
All right, we're going to continue following this pursuit on our sister station, KCAL 9 News. So for all of our CBS 2 viewers, turn to KCAL 9 right now. We will continue following this pursuit live. And again, this is a carjacking suspect who is still going in the South LA area. I believe he just passed Figueroa earlier, and now he is getting, it appears he's gaining speed again. So he slowed down, he stopped, now he's going fast all over again. It's just been a very erratic situation because, again, the fact that it's so wet and the roads are slick and visibility is limited, that certainly augments the concern and the heightened sense of danger right now. And you can see he's going through, it looks like several puddles, and obviously with the slick roads, the danger continues. And that's partly why the deputies say that they are being very careful with how they handle this situation.
And well, thank you for tuning to CBS 2 News this afternoon at 11:32. You can continue following the pursuit of this carjacking suspect on our sister station, KCAL 9 News.